if I want to give advice, like, I don't care who gives money, what gives money. Don't start any partnerships. Don't do anything until you have everything agreed, at least in some form of writing with a lawyer, with somebody, because otherwise you're going to get hurt in the end.
Interesting.
So this guy Tony gave me the first chance. So what happens is, in his head, he believes like he owns me. I want to venture out. I want to grow. And like, this guy's giving me a hard time. I can't take from anyone else. I can only do with him.
You felt that, I guess, pressure from him?
I felt tremendous pressure. Like, basically, like I belong to him.
Good morning, everybody. We are back on the Confronting the Impossible. It's my podcast show, Leo Jacobs, and I'm the host. And we're bringing you the good, the bad, and the ugly about the real estate market, specifically in the restructuring field. I have a very special guest today, Eli Karp, the founder and CEO of Hello Living. I mean, it's no surprise that Hello Living has had its ups, had its plateau, and had its downs. And I'm really, really excited to hear about what it is that the future looks like for Hello Living. But I guess before we get into that, I wanted Eli to introduce himself. So Eli, tell us a little bit about yourself. Thank you so much for joining my podcast. And I can't wait to get into it. So let's go. Let's talk about it.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
It's nice to be here. Okay, so in 2005, I was still, I was doing special ed teaching. I was driving from Borough Park to Williamsburg, and most of the times, there was a lot of traffic, so I was driving through the streets.
You were a teacher?
Yes.
You were a teacher? You have a master's degree in...
I never reached the master's because I started shifting into other things, but that was my goal, and that's what I started doing. I loved working with attention deficit kids.
Oh, wow.
Kids that, were smart but weren't able to sit and focus, and I had like some tricks how I worked with them to help them sit straight and focus, and by doing that, they were able to learn better. And as I was driving back and forth, and part of the things that I was always telling the kids and trying to motivate them, that in life, you have to push yourself. If you like doing something, whatever you feel you have a passion for, you have to push yourself. This was always my...
mantra.
Yes. And while I was driving every day back and forth, I used to pass Pacific Street there, Washington Avenue.
This is in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, and the place was always like run down. One time I'm driving through this giant sign. Massanutten used to have these mega signs for sale.
Shout out to Bob.
Yeah. And, I called up and I asked them about the property, what they have, and what they're offering. And interesting, this was something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to create. I loved creating things, making things happen.
So give us some context. What year is this?
So this is back in 2005.
2004.
End of 2004.
You're a teacher.
I'm a teacher.
In Brooklyn.
I was doing like privately with a few kids at a time. And, everything was good.
And you got into like real estate? You were driving up and
I decided, I always wanted to do real estate. Let me start off with one small project. Let me see how it goes. Let me get my feet wet into it. I took the little money I had. I took monies actually that came like the checks to pay off interest, cards, credit cards. I put together a little deposit and I made an offer. I didn't know how to negotiate then very well, and I made an offer. I said I only have $25,000 to put down for the deposit, and I needed $100,000 for put on. I said, give me 30 days to bring the remainder of the money. And then I went around pitching it to people and explaining it.
What is the it?
I put together like...
What was your first property? Tell me about that.
So the first property, yes, the first property was 925 Pacific Street. And the company, we decided to call it Pacific Blue. And
is residential, commercial?
And I was going to do a residential, and I wanted to do it different. I always like to do like double high ceilings and like floating floors, luxurious.
Was it a residential development or a commercial?
It was a residential area that was, as I said, like back in 2005, it was a rundown area. There was nothing there.
And there is what? What area is this?
So Today it's called Prospect Heights, which is a beautiful, beautiful area.
Very nice.
But
very nice.
at that time, it wasn't. So why I thought that I could build luxury here and get people to come is something I don't have an answer why. But I believed if you because they were selling on 4th Avenue, like 5-6 blocks down, they were selling for like $500-$600 a foot then.
Okay.
And they projected on this area, Prospect Heights, that it would be around 300 to 400. But I decided if I'm going to build something very unique and different, I'll be able to get the people from 4th Avenue to come here, pay a little bit less, probably around 500, and get so much more. I went to the open houses that they were having, and I looked at their units, and I said, I can design them so much better, so much more cleaner. It's hard for me to look back now and understand how, like, what made me, I've never done this before.
So you had no real estate experience?
Zero real estate experience.
So you were just inspired. You were inspired by the community.
I was inspired how, I was watching how the buildings were going up, and it was something that I really wanted to do. And since I always was preaching this to everyone, like, go for what you like and push yourself, I decided, let me do this, let me try. And I got into the first project. I didn't even get started, and I started with an architect. This was like, he was also a new architect from Austria. And I told him I want something very different, the units itself. I don't want the fancy buildings that people make, but I want the units to be very open, very spacious. And he was designing things for me, and I was like, playing around. It was such an enjoyment to design something on sketches and then see it like how it comes on paper and a plan and how it turns into 3D on the computer.
So this is exciting to you.
So exciting.
But wait, you borrow money from a credit facility?
I borrowed money from literally credit cards to go into it to get started. And
How much was it?
The original amount that I took out was $25,000. With that, I tied up the property, and then I started going around to investors, and I put myself together like these loose leaves with these plastic things and put the papers in, and I designed in sketches and numbers.
Booger and toenail, essentially.
And again, back into that, I didn't even have the proper spreadsheets. I remember going to one of the investors and showing him I'm going to build, and I'm explaining him how, and I'm going to build. It's not just this building. I want to make the whole neighborhood. I want to change the neighborhood.
Yeah, these big visions.
And this guy looked, and as I'm like twirling the pages in front of him, trying to get him excited, like, and he's looking at the end, I ask him, so do you want to invest? And he looks at me and he says, like, I don't know about this project, but I am so excited the way you are excited about this.
So passion sells.
Exactly, that I want to invest in you. How much money do you need? And from there it started. And once I got started, and I was dealing with the architects and then the engineers, and
Was it stressful for you?
The opposite. It was such an enjoyment. I loved anything that had to be creative or that you have to come up with a solution to solve a problem. Right. It was what got me going.
So you started this project. How many units was it?
So the first project was 15 units.
Wow. You didn't even go from 1 to 4. You just went straight to 15.
No, it was 15 units.
Why this project specifically?
Because those were the properties I was able to afford. The minute you went up to 4th Avenue, the property more than doubled, tripled in price.
Oh, wow.
So
what was the purchase price of this property?
So the purchase price of this property was like $1 million, I think 1.1 million. At the same properties that were trading on 4th Avenue were like $3.5 million. So for me, that $3.5 million was like, wasn't attainable. Don't ask me why the million was attainable.
Right.
But you know, $1 million, you feel okay. We'll figure it out. We'll make it happen.
And when you borrowed, you basically took out credit card lines.
Credit line, and from there, I was able to raise money, and to get. And again,
what was your first check from an investor, if you recall?
It wasn't a check, it was a wire, and the investor was so excited about it that like he asked me for my account information, my routing information. He's going to think about it and let me know. The next day he calls me, tells me, check your account. The funds, because I needed the additional.
How much was it?
I think it was $75,000 because that was the missing that I needed to put down for the down payment for the contract to get.
So it was 10%.
So it was the 10% that I needed to get down. So
did you give him any equity, or is it kind of like we'll talk about it later?
Yeah, that and this is something I want to share. Also, this is we can talk about this in its own. My issue, this investor was he got so excited, he gave me the money, and then he kept funding whatever I needed. And I always said with him, okay, so I have the paperwork, let's sit down, let's sign everything up, and he used to say, like, I don't understand why you're rushing here. Like, I'm the one giving you the money. I trust you. You don't have to trust me, right?
And who was this guy? Was he like?
It was a big mistake. But we'll talk about it later on because after we were doing multiple projects, he came back one day and he wanted me to do something else and change. And I said no. And he said, I don't understand. You work for me. You do what I tell you to do.
The change.
It changed because he decided that he wants to change it. That now he says I'm his employee. Because in the end there was no signed documents.
Let's not get into that yet.
I don't want to get into that part. But it worked out in the end. It wasn't an issue. It was resolved. But it's so. If I want to give advice, like, I don't care who gives money, what gives money. Don't start any partnerships. Don't do anything until you have everything agreed, at least in some form of writing with a lawyer, with somebody, because otherwise you're gonna get hurt in the end.
Interesting.
So
let's get. I guess we'll pocket. What I want to do is I want to pocket your first actual investment. Your first actual investment with this lender. Does he have a name, or do we want to give him a name?
You talking about investor?
I'm sorry, the investor.
So no, I don't want to use a name.
We'll call him Tony. Okay.
Yes.
So Tony and you do the investment, and it's a 15-unit building. It's in Brooklyn. It was your first investment into the real world of real estate.
Right.
So tell me the process about how that worked out, or it didn't work out. Tell me, did you make a profit? Did you exit it successfully? What were some of the issues that were attendant to it? Tell me about that.
So the project itself was very exciting. It was very different. It stuck out from the whole area like a sore thumb. And I realized very fast that I'm not going to get the people I want to come here because the rest of the block looks terrible. You know, across the street, there was another lot with piled up tires and junk, and down the block, there were ruined buildings. So I convinced this investor and other investors to come in and broaden. We need to change we need to buy up all these properties, and we need to create our own community. At that time, the company was called the Pacific Blue.
Your company, it wasn't called Hello Living.
No, it was called Pacific Blue.
That was the original.
That was the original
entity.
And I wanted to create a community. And how do I create the community? So I made different amenities in each building. One had a business center, one had the kids' playroom, one had a theater, one had a pool, billiards rooms.
Different buildings?
Different buildings on the block. And then I created the key fob system that it's a shared amenities. And my slogan was, say hello to a new way of living, shared amenities. This was my slogan. And I ran with it from 2005 till around 2008. In 2008, blogging started then, real estate blogging. I think the first one was Brownstoner. They started the blogging.
The Brownstoner, yes.
And all of a sudden, one day I read about myself and it says like this. The guy from Hello Living, because my slogan had hello in bold to a new way of living. The guy from Hello Living is starting another project that he's adding to the community. And I said, wow, I love that name. Hello Living. And that day I made myself an LLC and a website and everything.
So you tried to essentially ingratiate Hello Living and the shared amenity.
I saw
space.
how he looks at me and how they were viewing Brownstoner the way I'm doing it, and I said, "This is exactly what I want. This is community." And the way he was pitching it, I thought to myself, "Wow, this is such good marketing. I wouldn't be able to pitch it as good as he's writing it."
And how long into your, I guess, real estate career did he actually write about you?
Within 3 years.
Within 3 years.
So for real estate, 3 years is basically, that's when the first projects are coming to fruition.
So Pacific Blue was the little germ that became a little bit of like a flower.
Yes.
I'm assuming you successfully exited or kept
it was a tremendous it was very profitable. We ended up selling out at, when they were predicting originally like 300 a foot, and I was hoping I'm going to get 500, and I got more 6 and 650. I literally competed with I was selling for the same price that they were selling on 4th Avenue at the time.
Wow.
So, and again,
and it worked out.
It worked out way better than I expected.
What was the amenity in that building?
So the first amenity it was like the first WeWork business center that I created then, and you can hook up your laptops, and there was a big projector, you were able to use it. If you want to throw a party, this was also the party room. And what I found in the end, it's interesting, that nobody really used the amenity spaces the way I predicted people will. But
why?
But they all showed off. So I used to use a lot the amenity because I used to hang out there and I used to meet with people I wanted to show off. Right? These were very successful. And I used to watch people that just bought apartments showing it off to their parents, and they would come in and say, "This is the billiards room, this is with the gym, this is like..."
They would walk the block?
And they would walk the block around to show that by purchasing a condo in this building, now I have access to all these buildings. It becomes like a shared space. And it really worked. It brought people. It became... And then I made it, and they still continue this, block parties. So once a week, in the beginning, I sponsored them. We closed down the street, and we had vented for the kids, and people came from all over. It became like the community space. It became like and they still do it today. I'm long not involved because everything is sold out. But
so Pacific Blue, around Pacific Blue,
I had like 6-7 projects.
You started buying them up. With the same investor, or different investors.
So in the beginning it was the same, and then as it started growing, I started taking from other investors, and that's when the first investor felt like, and this happens a lot in business, right? Because they feel that they made you. And rightfully so in a way, right? Because he gave me my first chance to, get into development. So
this guy
Tony gave me the first chance. So what happens is, in his head, he believes like he owns me. And I remember talking to my lawyer, said, "I have a problem. Like I want to venture out. I want to grow, and this guy's giving me a hard time. I can't take from anyone else. I can only do with him." And
so there was a lockup period, or it felt like a lockup period where you couldn't go to somebody else.
I started feeling it wasn't officially, and I spoke to one of my lawyers then, and the guy tells me a good line. He says, "I understand him very much, but you can tell him like this: slavery was abolished a long time ago. You don't owe him anything. You owe him of what the deal and what you made,
But you felt that I guess pressure from him.
I felt tremendous pressure. Basically, I belonged to him.
You felt that way.
I felt that way, and he kept in every conversation. It was always
"Yo, I'm under you."
This, and then it would become more obvious whenever we had meetings with other people. He would always say, he would tell them this guy was nothing. I made him. I did it. And it became more and more. At one point,
and you felt like putting me down.
And I was always trying to circumvent it in a way, but the more I was trying to circumvent, the more he was more leashes he wanted on me.
Right. And how did you eventually get out of that? Or did you have to go to court? And
So I wasn't able to get out of that, but I did start taking funds from others, and I did started doing more projects on my own. And yes, he started.
What did he start doing? I want to know.
It created a fight. He started. First of all, he tried to stop me. Tried to put pendants on the new properties that I'm working on, because he claimed it's impossible that you're not using any of my funds into this.
So there was a lawsuit.
there was a lawsuit trying anything and everything. It wasn't about winning a lawsuit, because I don't think he thought
He just tried to create leverage.
I don't think he thought he has a chance to winning a lawsuit, but he had enough, and the people that know the system very well know how to just put chains around you. Real estate is very, very hard, and every day you have to jump through hoops, over bumps, and everything. And the minute you start just throwing legal stuff at you, like stopping and putting, and banks start calling, I mean, that messes everything up.
Oh, wow. So that was your first experience.
That was my first. This experience broke out in 2009.
You started with him 2005.
In 2005 and 2009. And in the end, we had to settle up. Okay, these are your properties. You take this. This is this.
You settled up with him.
And I settled up. The way I settled up was that I actually gave away most of the stuff that I did. I bought my freedom. In other words, now I can do whatever I want. I can do my own buildings. I can do my own things. And I can take money from whoever. So this, it was worth paying him off. Okay, you take the building, you take this, you take that. Let me
Thank you. See you later.
Thank you. See you later.
So 2005, you had your first project, Pacific Blue. Within 3 years, you built a community.
A whole community.
And then in 2009, Tony and you split.
Yes.
And you bought your ticket out into becoming independent.
Yes.
That's really admirable. Actually,
it was worth it because the whole idea. What I wanted is to be able to, stretch my wings and do whatever, I feel.
And you were very local. You were very local. You were very local.
And I followed the train line. I followed things that I felt like I can go now 4 or 5 blocks from where I just built.
Were you still teaching at that point or no? Were you still
No.
So
the first year I was still taking on some clients and just slowly getting out. But once I started, there was so much fulfillment. Purpose, fulfillment in creating what I'm doing that I was happy.
So you essentially got into a fight in a disagreement with your first partner, and before we move on, I wanted to know how were you able to traverse that? How were you able to navigate and negotiate that? Who were your resources that you went to make sure that you can get out of this actual thing? Because you and I didn't know each other. I mean, I think I was in law school at that point. But which resources did you harness to kind of get out of that predicament? Because legal issues are serious issues. They could bankrupt people.
Right.
So what did you use?
Again, and it wasn't it wasn't like today. You couldn't go on the internet and get today everything is so advanced. You can do so much research, so much in guidance. I didn't have that. No, it was local from people in the community that were advising me. But again, I didn't. It was different then because I didn't think I had a chance legally in beating them. Because of financials, what it costs to get involved in legal, and I know, and I knew in the end, it's all about because the whole fight was all about the ego, that he owns everything, that he is. So in the end, the way I was able to is give his ego what his ego wants and
let him go
and go. I realized one of the. I remember I was talking, I can't remember his name. I was talking to a lawyer and he was explaining it and he said, I don't think you're so good in fighting. I think you're better in creating. So don't waste your time here. Whatever's finish off, clean off, and go out and do what you do best. Again,
he agreed. That Tony agreed. He's like, give me this.
In the end, Tony agreed.
Did you mediate? Did you litigate?
We had a mediation. Basically, the mediation was I'm saying, okay, here's it's all you.
Was it in front of a rabbi? Or was it in front of what was it?
It was. In the end, the mediation was I reached out to actually some of his investors. I found out who his investors were that were giving him money for things. And I reached out to them and I said, can we sit down? Can we discuss?
And you sat down and you resolved.
I sat down and yeah, it was very easy. Once I sat down with him and I told him, look, this is what it is. This is the story. This is things. I'm here to work it out.
And he listened to you.
And he listened, and he made it, yeah.
And you exited in 2009 from him.
I exited in 2000. I think that the exit happened like 2010. In 2011, I started again.
And where did you start? So that's chapter 1, I guess, right?
I started on the corner, Washington, from where I did all my other projects.
Tell the audience what Washington is. It's Brooklyn, Manhattan, Bronx. Where is that?
Sorry, it's again. Today we call it downtown Brooklyn. It's a block. It's 2 blocks from the Barclays Stadium.
So you went from Prospect, which is south of Brooklyn Stadium, I guess Barclays.
Yes.
So you went up north. And how was it in 2010? It wasn't so.
No, it wasn't.
It was horrible.
It was horrible. It wasn't good at all. I was able to pick up properties on the low side.
And how did you know they were low? Like, what told you that?
Because 5 blocks further down, up to 4th Avenue, you see tremendous price jumps. So I and there's a reason why, because the people didn't come down to these blocks. They stayed the 4th Avenue with the trains, with the bus, with everything there.
Like Carroll Gardens.
Yes. So it wasn't the competition, because the community was way better. Everything was way better. So
it wasn't rezoned also, right? There was no rezoning there?
There was none at the time.
But now we know it as there's skyscrapers in Brooklyn there, right?
Right. Now it's like that whole area has been transformed. I mean, when I was selling them, right, for $600 a foot, by a few years later, they were trading already for almost $1,000 a foot. So it grew right away.
Let me ask you a question. Your intuition brought you there, or what brought you there?
My intuition.
You were like, this is
because I wanted to do something. I wanted to create. Development was something that I always wanted to do, and I felt like, hey, this is, I can make this work. It was much, as I said, it was much cheaper. Like with the knowledge that I have today, would I've done that? No, because
But what is it that you did?
What I did was I created a neighborhood. And
in Brooklyn,
in Brooklyn, I created a neighborhood that didn't exist, and that takes a tremendous amount of work. I literally went around to stores on the corners, and I paid for them to redo. I told them if they redo their front window, I'm going to buy them a new sign. In the store, because they had these like ripped signs hanging down. So it wasn't just it was building an entire neighborhood, and then the marketing for it, and then the entire time, as I was saying, a lot of developers, wannabe developers, they come in. Oh, I find a property, and they'll build, they'll be busy, and then it comes in the end, they'll hire a marketing team. Okay, so we sell it. Who's your target audience, or what? Like, and they want to know a bunch of questions, but you can't start marketing at the end. You have to know in the beginning what you're trying to accomplish, who you're attracting, what type of people you're after, what family size. Are you after singles? Are you after married? Are you after families? Because you have to build accordingly.
So let me get this straight.
So some people have like, they'll do a little bit of everything. They'll do a little 3-bedroom, a little 2-bedroom, and 1-bedroom. So whoever comes can come. But if you really want to target and you really want to get a certain, for the building, you have to know the target audience. What type of people are going to buy here?
So you went to Brooklyn downtown.
And I decided not to go for families. In other words, I didn't build for family because I thought family schools here. I don't know, the schools weren't good versus like going a little bit up to 4th Avenue in Brooklyn.
We're talking about Brooklyn downtown.
We're talking only about Brooklyn downtown. Yes.
So you went there. And you started exploring. And you said no families. What was your first project in Brooklyn downtown? Tell me.
So that was the first one was on Pacific Street, 925 Pacific Street.
925 Pacific?
Then I had 935 Pacific, then 957.
Are these commercial, residential?
These are all residential buildings.
Residential units?
Residential
Were they
units.
ground up? Were they construction projects?
All ground up.
So you purchased the land?
Purchased the land. Some were purchased land. Some I purchased old industrial buildings that were demolished. Everything was ground up, brand
and
new.
What made you go and buy Pacific Street specifically? What guided you there? Was it the price? Was it where it was located? What was the issue?
It was located right off on Washington Avenue, which I felt was a very nice avenue, and I felt that this is going to get only better. And the price was extremely affordable.
And
it
how
was
many
the
units
price.
was it? How many
So
units?
the first one was 15 units, then added 10 units, then another 18 units, then another 25 units. Then
Did you have investors at this point?
Yes, everything had to have investors, because you need investors for the equity, and then you need to getting the loans. Now, starting off, the loans weren't easy to get as well.
Why is that?
Because I was never developed. I'm coming to a bank. Oh, I'm going to build. And I said, okay, and your resume, what did you do till now? And I said, I was a special ed teacher. I was helping. And I said, okay, thank you.
So how did you
I
get
went
financing?
around to 30. I think it was almost. I think the lender, CPC Bank. Oh, what a special bank that was. Robert Riggs then was the president. He was taking care of it, and I was trying to pitch him the deal, and he asked me a question. We have a limited amount of money that we give out for construction loans. Why would we pick you, for example, who never, you didn't do anything before? Like, I'm only have, let's say, a certain amount of money. I want to give it to the people that have the most experience.
Right. And how did you pitch him?
And I was telling him, I came up, you have to see this design. I came up with an interesting design where after you cross 2,000 square feet, you have to have 2 means of egress, 2 staircases. The loss factor gets bigger. I designed the building in a way where it overlaps, and it's 1 foot less. It's actually 3,000 square foot floor plates, but because I made these double heights all over, I made it 1 foot less than 2,000, and I don't have the loss factor. And basically, in my entire building, the way I designed it, I have less than 3% loss factor in the building. And he says, that can't be.
And what did you tell him?
And I told him, okay, so if I come back and I show you exactly how
would you give it to me?
Would you give it to me? And he stands up and he gives me his hand and he says, yes.
Really?
Yeah. I said, give me a week, I'll come back, I'll show you.
And you proved it to him?
And I proved it to him, and he smiled, and he tells me the same thing. Your passion is going to open every door you want.
And Eli,
it's Robert Riggs, and it's so funny. It's been for so long. These first compliments are the ones that
mattered to you.
Mattered, and
that
was my path.
Did it feel impossible at times when you were?
It felt impossible, and a lot of times I used to at night I was go, it's like, why did I get into this? How
you were pulled so many ways. Equity, raising debt,
this and that.
And you weren't flush with money too, right?
The good thing was that being a developer then was a prestigious thing in the city. In other words, I needed my approvals. I needed everything. They literally worked along with me when I needed to go for my planning and stuff like that. Later on, it just changed. It turned into let's try to squeeze them out. Let's try to get, on every violation, everything.
This is
the city. I'm talking, when I started off, the city wasn't like that. The city was very pro business.
Development.
Very.
Who was the mayor at that moment?
I think it was Bloomberg.
Bloomberg was mayor.
Yeah.
So when did that city development intuition change? When did it go from, you're in the black to you're in the red, in terms of their notion of we want to develop with you.
Again, once Bellagio came in, everything started everything shifted to almost like you're the villain here, you were treated like a villain.
But Bloomberg, you were.
Yeah. It was very
opportunity.
There was opportunity. It was very easy. And later on, they just made complications to build, to get permits, to so much more difficult every step of the way.
So I appreciate that. So let's get to vision for a second, okay? So you went from Pacific Blue to Hello Living, okay, because of Brownstone, the way you mentioned it, and you had this concept of developing a very hyper local community, which I guess worked for Pacific Blue. Now you're going downtown and you start seeing the challenges, you start seeing maybe the difficulties, and you start growing. How did that Hello Living mantra develop through time, right? How did it develop? How did it expand? What became different about Hello Living? Is that mantra still alive today? Has it grown? Tell me about that.
So,
where did Hello Living begin?
So Hello Living began. once I was recognized that I'm not just a developer, but I'm a game changer, and I changed the areas, that opened up. I didn't realize how much the marketing, how valuable it was, but that opened up that I was approached by so many who were interested in what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, which opened up the door for equity. I mean, and that's every developer's dream, right? That in order for
people want to invest into you.
People want to invest, and from there, I like the idea of allowing, small investors to come in and be part of it.
Okay, but what motivated them to come to you? For what concept? What were you selling at that point in downtown Brooklyn?
Because they were seeing somebody who came into a neighborhood that didn't even afford to be able to build such buildings in this area because it didn't make any sense. And it was actually done and was extremely successful. All I had to do is I had to bring people down to that block, and they just look. And it looks, even now, if you walk, it looks so different than these little brownstone and a half little houses that are still left here. It was very polarizing. These buildings look extremely different. So, and people, wow, and they would say all the same thing. How did you think of coming here? What made you? So all of this turned out to be the best promotion for me, and people started throwing money.
And people started throwing money. They started throwing money because they believed in you, one.
Because they believed that if they're going to give me money, I will see it through to the end. So
you were a good executioner.
Yes. And then we started in 2012. I started a new project. It started going to Crown Heights, which also was I was able to buy the property for
very cheap.
Very, very cheap.
How important is cost basis in purchasing the property? How important was it at that time, and is it still important today?
So I realized that there's two ways of making money in the development. One is which is the standard, you create something from nothing, right?
Which is what you did, the community, hyperlocal community.
Well, you're right. Number two is you create value in this area that automatically, even that the property goes up in value. So for example, in this Crown Heights, when I started off, by the time I was finished building the project and I was going to market, the properties there around me, because of what I did, tripled in price. So when I paid $3 million, I wanted to buy myself after I was finished another project, and they were for the similar size, and they were already charging. They wanted $9 million. I think it went for $8 million. In the end, it tripled. So I realized that if I can continue doing this, going not too far off, but just a few blocks off, where there's already a demand, and I can pick up properties for so much cheaper, and I can create the same momentum, and I have already a following that people liked. And again, I also tried to build units that are very different. Most of my units are floor through. You don't have these. Most buildings are built like a C or a H, where you have 25% facing front, 25% facing back, and 50% facing in the inner courts. Nah, I didn't want that. Every single unit had to be flow through by me. You had to be able to see from the front to the back.
Interesting.
And to design one house floor is very easy, but to design it in a building is extremely difficult. Eventually, I moved to a bigger concept. Elevators, private elevators. Elevators open up. There's a few banks of elevators, and they open up directly into your apartments. So
that's the concept you created in Brooklyn.
I created this concept with these big balconies, and somewhere they open up onto the balcony. I created all kinds of different types of. So I had no competition. That was also my trick a little bit, because if somebody wanted something a little bit different,
right,
they came to my building. So to point out what you were saying is, like, when I was building on Pacific Street, there were always other developers that say, hey, look, this is a happening area. Let me buy a little small property, let me build something, and let me ride the train along.
Did you have any investors that were your competition? No.
But what happened was, they just thought that because I'm building and they're going to build, it's going to be the same thing. So when I came out to the market at $600 a foot, They came out also for the same 600 a foot, but they didn't have amenities. Their units were typically, as I call it, cookie cutter style units, and they couldn't compete. And they had to drop to 5, and they still couldn't compete and sell. So at one point, comes over to me and it says, "Look, I need you to help me out here. Put your name, add my building in your portfolio. Make it like it's part
Branded.
of that. Branded as the Hello Living building."
Interesting.
And
who
I'm
told you
look-
that first? Who told you that first?
This was this developer that bought a piece of property that was building next to me on
You had
Pacific
such
Street.
brand recognition that they asked you to brand
Asked me
it.
to brand it, and I said, I can't. It's, you don't understand. It's not my brand, Hello Living. It's the concept. Look at the building. Look at the units. Look at the units that I'm making. Look at the units that you're making.
They're not the same.
It's not the same. Like I had, everything was like more, again, at that time was more polished concrete floors and stuff like that. He had still like didn't even put even like the regular woods. Like it didn't even, everything I did was very new and open space.
And
open,
others
again,
couldn't compete
floor
with it.
through units with like, and it couldn't compete. So like I told him, I'm not going to help you by putting it.
So for how long, so it went from 2005, 2009, 2012. So between 2012 and 2020, you were building up? What was happening?
I was going from project to project. I had like 10 projects running simultaneously. And each bigger ones I was doing 15-story building, 12-story buildings. And again, 15-story buildings where my loss factor was less than 6% on a tall building.
That's impressive.
That is unbelievable.
That's
and
impressive.
The private elevators. And not only that, every single unit, think about it, on a tall building, every single unit had floor-through apartments. That is so difficult to design and put all the pieces together.
Let me ask you a question. Between 2012 and 2020, we'll do cut off at COVID for now, okay?
Right.
So between 2012 and 2020, you're growing at an exponential
At
rate,
an
right?
exponential rate.
And where are you investing? Are you investing in Manhattan? Are you investing into Bronx? Or are you only in Brooklyn?
Only in Brooklyn.
And what areas in Brooklyn?
I kept moving. So the last areas I went to was Prospect Lefferts Garden, because at the point when I came in there, it was like Pacific Street was before I started.
So Lefferts Garden.
So in 2014, I switched over to Lefferts Garden. I started buying up property for literally next to nothing at the time.
So you went to burgeoning neighborhoods and you essentially improved the locale of those neighborhoods.
Yes, and I already had a fan base, which was very helpful.
Meaning the brand, the Hello Living brand.
Hello Living brand, but it created a fan base, meaning that there were people. I had no idea, but I was once talking by a Biz Now conference, and after I came, somebody comes over to me and says, like, I'm a big fan. I said, okay. Yeah, like what? He says, I follow you. Tell me where your next area is, because I like buying stores. I like buying stores in the areas that you come. So he wanted to go on North Street Avenue, and he bought stores following me, nice coffee shop. So it actually worked in my favor. So I would give them, a lot of tips where I'm going to do the next development, because they started buying up small things also to make it better. I didn't care. I didn't believe, I was never afraid of competition. The opposite. I invited competition, because I was doing something, I was attracting a different clientele, and it didn't bother me that the opposite, that there were other people also building.
You didn't care because you're...
Not only I didn't care, because my whole thing is I went to new neighborhoods. I needed them to help me. I can't lift an entire neighborhood myself.
So you needed more people. You need to aggregate more people, more vendors, more people with ideas.
Right. So if think about it, an investor or a real estate developer wants to come in Manhattan, he doesn't want competition here, because he wants to buy up every good spot. He doesn't look for competition.
But for you, it was collaborative.
But for me, I needed that, because it's not Manhattan. I need to bring it up. So I need other people. You like buying stores and redoing stuff? Perfect. You follow me. Come with me. This is where I'm going to be going. This is a little...
And it raised the value of your properties.
And small developers that were going to buy like 20, 30 and build like a 6, 8, 10 family home. Yeah, like that's what I want.
I have a question for you. You had a lot of success early on, and you had a lot of success through building in Lefferts. How much money did you have under management at that point, from when you first began, from the $25,000 to basically up until say 2019?
I was
100 million, 200 million,
probably $500 million.
$500 million. Yeah. So it was about $500 million in debt and equity.
No, and constantly consumed. I had outstanding loans and things. It was probably in the hundreds of million around, and then you take from people. There was so much, and this is a funny thing because we were talking before, and was saying I was mentioning that after one of the conferences that I gave, a group of young people came over and they said, like, I'm so inspired, I want to go into real estate. And I ask, why? And they say, oh, because I want to be rich. And I say, why? Why do you want to be rich? And because, and they said, what? So I can have freedom. I can go. I want to hang out with my friends. I want to buy a boat. I want to go. So I told them, then if that's your end goal, then that's where you're going to end up always. If there's going to be a business deal in the middle, you're working on something, and your friends call you up, hey, we're going out, we're having fun. If this is your end goal, that's where you're always going to run. In order to be successful in business, you have to enjoy the art of what you're doing yourself. In other words, I didn't do this, because I wanted money. I did this because I love to create and to do things. Making money is a byproduct.
So you were driven by purpose.
I've driven by purpose. So, for example, you love to share, you love to give advice, and I see it on podcasts and even on the social media and groups. People ask you something, you share. You don't even charge.
No.
You enjoy what you do. You enjoy the podcast.
Correct.
If this podcast is going to bring you money through different sources,
I don't care about that. I don't care.
Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it's a byproduct.
Correct. But it's a byproduct of what I enjoy.
Exactly. And that's what the goal has to be. So,
I can't listen to you if I don't enjoy what you're talking about, right?
So
it's very hard to pretend to do that.
Exactly. So this is the same in the real estate also. It's not about, how much money I didn't even know my net worth constantly. The only times I knew was when
you're
I had to do
loan.
When I had to have like being audited and getting the numbers, and every single time I saw the numbers, I said, oh wow. And I couldn't even believe it myself. But for me, it was never about the money, because the money, once it's no longer a job, in other words, where
you're in the machine,
you're in the machine, there is no such a thing as money. You don't have money. You have value. And everybody wants to do business with you. Banks will throw money at you. Everybody wants to do business because you have value. And that's what you're worth. Not what you're really worth, but what people perceive.
You're talking about influence.
It's more than influence, because it's
You're talking
fact.
about the name, the brand name.
In other words, it's not money anymore. It's what you can do. It's what you can accomplish.
It's your reputation.
Reputation by going to banks, by going to people, and they look at you, so they measure your success. Mm-hmm. So it's not your success.
So you're able to tell a story of how successful you've become based on the projects that you've finished. And even though your net worth may be $1, it doesn't matter, because you're driven by purpose, and you're driven by creating, and you're driven by creating these communities that you feel happy about. So money is the byproduct, and purpose is really the end goal.
Is the end of creating something, to making it happen. Yes, that's the end. That has to be the end goal in order for you to really succeed. If you're looking for freedom with having, the more money you have, the less freedom you have. Because you have to hold, you have to watch, you have to protect it. You take money from people, you take money from banks. Every day that there's a mishap is costing you money. You lose money every single day.
How did you manage that? How did you?
It is.
Did you have a team of people?
You have a team of people, but it's day-tight compartments. You have to plan literally almost like every day what you're going to accomplish, and at one point, that all goes out of the window, and you become more like a firefighter. Every day there's a different fire that you got to deal with, and you pick the biggest fire, the most destructive one, and you focus on that, and you move from. You have no day, you have no night. There's no nothing.
It's 24/7.
It's 24/7, and I think people have to know this, because a lot of times if I wish I can have this and free. No, it doesn't work like that. It becomes your business. You start growing your business. After a while, it becomes alive. It's alive. It needs to eat. You need to hire more people. You need to feed them. You're growing. It's almost like you're growing an army, and it's so exhaustive.
Did you feel unstoppable at some point?
That you feel unstoppable, and this is the hardest part, because it's dangerous. Also, you want to feel unstoppable because you need to keep going, and every day you're going to get hit with things, and you need to keep going. On the other hand, you feel unstoppable, and you make maneuvers or do things that, like, it's going to come back to bite you. So
let's talk about. So this is the eponymous rise of Hello Living. Okay, it's the eponymous rise of Hello Living. Let's talk about COVID for a second. Is COVID when things began to change and began to shift, or is COVID a rebirth of something? When did things start, cracking? When did things start, plateauing? When did things start going down?
So, I think of COVID almost a little bit like a volcano in a way, right? The volcano is disruptive. And then once it finishes, everything grows back like beautiful green moss, and it grows back and it grows healthier.
Right.
And this is exactly what COVID is. It's a shock. It's like a reboot to the system. So if you almost finished the file, right? You're by the end of finishing the file, and the reboot happens before you finish the file, you're screwed. You gotta start again. And if you're literally starting off right when you're in the best position ever, because you're now in a very good position. For me, unfortunately, some of my buildings, literally, I had to finish the refinance was March 2020, and I was supposed to close. And the stock market crashed when COVID closed, and all the loans got pulled. And from there, it just what
happened? Tell me slowly. Like when March 2020 came about, that was a horrible day. I remember myself where I was still in Queens, not in the city. Actually just signed a big space in Queens. So I remember that day very vividly. Everything that shut down. It was barren town in New York City. Everybody was sick. It was really a pandemic, right? It was a pandemic. We didn't necessarily know what it was. COVID really hit a lot of people hard.
Right.
And you had an eponymous rise, and 2020 is when things started to groove backwards. And nobody expected it. Nobody expected it. But what happened now is you can't refi, right? Because real estate is about the refi game.
It's all about the refi.
It's basically plan, execute on your plan, refinance, right? Plan, execute on your plan, refinance. And in the planning stage, you have the seed capital, you have the equity investors, you execute, you refinance. If you can't refinance, you have to carry that interest. If you can't refinance, you can't exit your equity stakeholders. If you can't refinance, you can't put it into another project. So what occurs now is, do you feel stuck? Do you feel stuck in what's happening between 2020, we're in 2025, right? So I'm assuming between 2020 and 2022, things start occurring. So tell me about that.
So for me, it started a little bit earlier. So here's the not so exciting part about real estate, about being a developer particularly. So you need constantly to get loans, right? In the beginning, I went to banks to give me the loans, whether it was Banco Popular, Excellent Bank, Investors Bank. All these banks are real banks, meaning they lend you money according to the deal.
They're conventional.
They're conventional loans. Those are the best, and those are the only ones that anyone should use. Why? Because they are not here to hurt you. They are not here to take anything away from you. They are here, plain and simple. They have
their interest in the
They have to make the interest deposits. You don't get to deal when you make a deal with the bank. You don't deal with the CEO of Investors Bank or Banco Popular. You deal with their bankers that they assign to you. And those people, they get a paycheck. They don't make more money, less money because your project was a success.
They're in the groove.
They're in the groove. Those are the best, and in my opinion, the only one. Now, the same way as my projects took off and were very unique and different, the same way it attracted all kinds of investors, it also attracted all kinds of bad sharks, bad lenders. So this is where it becomes tricky. So
2019 or 20?
So in 2019. So in 2019, all of a sudden, I found myself that one of these big lenders, Madison Capital, who was coming. They wanted me to take a loan on a new project, and I didn't.
They approached you.
They approached me. I didn't take the project. In the end, they went and they bought off all my notes that I had currently with other lenders, and then backdated me, put me in default for found reasons.
Why did they do that? Why did they do that?
Because now they have my loans because they like the building.
They thought that what?
They thought, hey, this is a perfect way how we can. These are good buildings. We feel comfortable taking them.
But you were under default, or what was happening?
No.
They just bought it.
They just bought it. Some of them, and it came to refinancing. So here's where it gets tricky. So as I said, when you deal with regular banks, you're dealing with the conventional banks, you're dealing with the bankers. They don't care about anything about your story. This is the loan you want. This is when you're refinancing. This is when you deal with, all of a sudden, the Josh Zegan, who's the head of Madison, right? All of a sudden,
let's talk about it.
So it comes down. Let's talk about it. Let me see. Let me walk your site. He's becoming my friend now.
So Josh Zegan
is my best friend. Oh, I'm going to help you in this project and every project. All of a sudden, I see myself. Hey, wow! Look, I really made it in this business. Not only can I raise equity easily, but I have and they're going to give me loans up to 80%. You know, I used to be like 60, 65. And you have to remember something, that when you're passionate about something, you cannot see, and your end goal is to deliver something, right? You cannot see these people on the side just like, I call it like a virus. Because what is a virus? It comes to the cell knocking, hey, and then the cell says, you look familiar, because it makes himself look familiar. Then it comes in and just takes over your body. And this is exactly what they do. They come in, let me hear about the other projects. Where do you have a problem? What can I solve?
Did they buy it already, or they're about to buy it?
They bought the loans, and I started freaking out, because I remember everybody said, these are like the shark, these are the worst. But instead, that's what everybody was telling me. I said, no, Josh, the nicest guy. He's my friend. We became very close.
Are you talking like hanging out with him, or just professional?
Professional. But back and forth, he gave me his number. I texted him, I called him, he responded to anything. What do you do when you need to close? I can close it. I'll give you for every single price. You don't have to go anywhere. I'll even give you equity. I have different funds for different things. I'll give you everything. So I didn't run away from him. You understand? I felt, he's going to refinance. I said, but you put me in default here. You see, I have funds. I have to follow the rules on this fund. So for this fund, but for the next fund, I'm going to get you out of this. I'm going to get another fund to take you out from here.
Why were you in default?
I look back, and sometimes I think when I'm looking back at emails, it's so hard for me to go back. And I see, how didn't I see this? The guy was everything stepping. 2020. So it's so easy to go back and see. Right. But while you're in it, you can't see it. You cannot see.
But let me challenge you for a second. Okay? Let's talk about the lender and borrower relationship for just a second, okay? It seems like in 2019 you were having issues, okay? You were having some issues. Maybe you were invested in many, many places, okay? You were invested. You had a lot of projects going on. You're at the height of your career, I'm assuming. And, if Josh Zegan was here, he would probably say, well, look, I'm just a banker. I'm just a lender. You defaulted, right? You don't want to feel my wrath. You don't want to feel my friendship. You don't need me around or need you around. Why don't you just pay your bills, right? And pay your lender. So you spoke about Poplar, and you spoke about Immigrant Bank, and you spoke about other banks, the conventional banks, and you also spoke about the ability to tell them a story, the ability for them to listen, the ability for them to invest into you, into Hello Living, and this whole concept and this whole brand. And then you have a gentleman such as Josh Zegan. Josh Zegan is obviously very well known in the industry. He's Madison Realty Capital. They've done billions in transactions. He would likely just say, look, you got to pay your bills. You got to pay your bills. And if you're not paying your bills, I'm the one that purchased your notes, right? He purchased. So he's kind of like an uninvited guest into your situation. But I think he would say, and I mean, this is me challenging you a little bit, he would say, look, I'm an opportunist. And your bank is the bank that sold to me. And I bought that, and I got to know you, right? I got to know you, and yes, I see that there's a story there, but you also need to pay, and you failed to pay, and as a consequence of you failing to pay, and me being an uninvited guest, I guess it's like 50-50. He's at fault because he was an uninvited guest, and you're at fault because you didn't pay. What's the conversation there? What's the conversation there from your point of view and Josh Egan's point of view? Because if you're not paying and he's an uninvited guest, but he's in the business and you're in the business, how do you reconcile that? And that's what I'm really interested in, because I hear your point. He was your friend, but he was not your friend. He has business to do. You have business to do. It's an interesting concept, right? Pay your bills. I don't get into your life. You don't pay your bills. I get into your life. Is he just protecting his investors? Do you believe in your heart that he had, I don't want to say evil intent, but to take over your property? What is the thing that you're trying to point out in your relationship with Josh Egan and Madison Realty Capital? Because that's where I'm challenging you. There's another side to this, right? But I'm sure you have your opinion about the way you viewed it. So resting on the bedrock of, I'm going to say it the way they say it, fuck you, pay me, right? And if you don't pay, then fuck you, right? But were you trying to tell them a story too and have them believe in you? And what happened there? So tell me about that. I want to hear your thoughts.
So again, Josh Egan's opportunistic, right? He finds ways, and he's very smart. He knows what he's doing. So for example, he bought a note from me, from my lender, on Nostrand Avenue. It wasn't in default. He bought a note. Now he has to service, right? So what he does is, first he comes in, he buys time. Everything I send him, for a payment that we need to advance, everything took longer. Whatever I had before was a 2-3 day turnaround, and I got funded. Here, all of a sudden, it was a week and a half. Then
so there's a slowing process.
And he did everything to slow down. Why? Because I had only enough money in reserve for the interest, till up to November. He bought in the end of May. I was able to finish the building had he done everything accordingly, but he didn't. At one point, it was 8 weeks that I didn't get funding, and every time was a different excuse. Oh, I'm waiting for this, I'm waiting for that. I need to see an updated insurance. Everything that he can do to delay, because every day he was collecting a tremendous amount. And I kept saying, you got to start funding faster, otherwise I won't. Don't worry about it. If you need to extend, it was always, I have another fund, I can give you extra money. So it's all a game. But slowly, and I was literally coming to the finish line, and I saw I can't wait to finish and get a new loan. I need to find a new lender. So I started going out to new lender right before I was able to finish the project. And the minute, this was already February 2020, and the minute I asked for a payoff note, he sent me back with a default that now I'm in default from when he bought it, all the way back from May. So he kept funding the whole time at slow pace, but now he tells me, oh, you've been in default. So now from May, you have to pay another $4 or $5 million in interest to get out. How can I get out?
So the answer to Josh Egan's question would be, when he says, fuck you, pay me, is I can't pay you. Right. The reason I can't pay you is a consequence of what you did in slowly funding me, right?
Yes.
So that would be the answer, right, to Josh Egan. But Josh would then say, well, look, you got to have reserves. You got to have reserves. You got to pay your interest, and you didn't have that. So, tough noogie, tough luck, right? Yeah. Tough luck. But you're saying in a burgeoning field.
But again, that's why I'm saying he's a genius in this. He knows all the tricks in the trade. And again, as I said
and you
before,
didn't know them.
And I didn't know it.
Because because you weren't dealing with those types of people.
No, I wasn't. I was never dealing. When I started dealing with Josh, like it was so. This was a new breed. All of a sudden, I'm like exposed to a new, very sharp, very cunning. They dot their I's, they cross their T's, and everything. But everything they do it like just like you don't make it every step.
So they have you. They have you looking at a turbine, and the turbine is turning, and you're kind of being sucked into the turbine.
I'm being sucked into the turbine. I have to say, when I started realizing that I'm sinking and you can't get out.
So what you're saying.
At that point, I was almost able to get out because I was going to take, I don't care what loans, anybody, just get out.
So it wasn't the project. It was the behavior.
No, the project was a success.
It was the behavior between the lender and the borrower that changed.
Yes.
That's the claim.
Is because I was no longer dealing with regular conventional banks. I was dealing with people
private.
that are monetizing for every mistake they can catch me on. They can charge more fees. They're pocketing in their money. When you deal with the bankers, they're not pocketing anything from penalizing you. But when you deal with somebody, Josh Ziegen, everything he made on loans that like I was due, let's say I had to pay him 40 at the end when they took away the building from Nostrand, I owed him $41 million and he charged me $68 million.
So what you're saying is his business model is a loan to own operation?
It's not so much a loan to own. They have the loan to own, but it's a loan to see how much I can squeeze out in the end. Because on
that's
every
how you
loan,
felt.
That's how I felt. It came to the end with the payoff. There was always an issue. There was always something. You always had the other fees you had to cover, anything and everything. And also another thing. They played like, I need the closing docs. We're going to close in 2-3 weeks. It's always the night before, the day before. Here's all the documents. Here's all the sign. All you do is sign papers. There's nothing attached.
But can I get into his defense for just a second?
Sure.
Again, I'm challenging you here, okay? So Josh says, look, you signed the docs. Yes, I'm an uninvited guest.
Right.
I'm an opportunist. And, my team read these documents and you signed them. So why am I at fault for your future misery? Wait. Josh is going to say, why am I at fault for your future misery?
Right.
Because you signed the documents, you didn't have a good lawyer, you went and negotiated with Popular Bank for these types of terms, and I think what you would say in return is, well, I didn't have to worry about those terms. Let me say it. Then you could repeat. We're talking here, right?
Right.
You might say, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong. You might say, look, I didn't have to worry about those terms. I've looked at those terms. My attorney advised me of those terms, but because I had such a good situation with these other banks, I never thought and I never knew that someone like you can come into this proceeding, an uninvited guest, and start squeezing me for what I agreed to. To which Josh would say, well, I guess you got to have a better lawyer, or I told you so, right? So I want to hear your thoughts here.
You asked very good questions, and I'm going to answer it.
Okay, because I don't want you to think. I don't want this podcast to be as we're talking bad about the lender. I want to kind of jive between the. Right. I want to reconcile how the lender feels and how you feel, and why they might be right and why you might be right. So tell me why you're right, and tell me why it's unfair. So
in the end, I would say that he's right, because as what you said, he has the papers, he has everything. Now,
right.
But the way he does it is very tricky, and that people have to learn from it. In other words,
so tell the people. What do we got to know?
So a normal bank will give you all the documents weeks in advance of what you're going to be signing.
Right.
He doesn't. And he calls you up the last minute, like 2-3 days before. He says, who are you going to use for lawyer? And I'm telling him the lawyer's like, no, I'll give you a lawyer that you're going to use that knows already my documents. And knows already. And he gave me the lawyer, and he sent me this, and he already sent the paperwork to that lawyer introducing me.
So it's pressure.
So I'm using a lawyer that.
So you were like, okay, whatever, it's okay, it's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. And again, like, he's my friend. Where he's going to give me a lot. It's not just, he's so good. I know.
Eli, come on. He's my friend. He's my friend.
Let me tell you.
He's not your friend.
Okay. So
he's not your friend.
What I'm trying to bring, of course he's not.
But how do you miss
because when you want money to build, right? And this guy says, I'll give you as much as you want, whatever you want, just sign the docs and I'll give it to you. Plus.
But aren't you taking advantage of him? Right? He's saying, sign, I'll give you.
Right.
So if Josh's sitting here, Josh would tell you, well, listen, pal, you said, I said, we got the money, this, that, let's go. So what I'm trying to say is yes, I understand that there's unfairness. I understand that it's a different caliber.
And also,
of
I
lender.
don't really have a way out because I can't go somewhere else. He already holds my notes. He's
the uninvited guest.
He's the uninvited guest. He's already here. I can start fighting with him, and then he's going to. I know how fast banks can dismantle you. So I can't fight with him, and I have to smile and
do the donkey dance,
do the doggy, and hope that whatever he's saying he's going to come true.
So there's a little faith.
There's a little faith. And there's some people that can do it so good, like Steve Rosenberg from Greystone. A genius. He's like like the grandfather. I'm gonna help you. I know what you're going through. You can't get a loan. Don't worry about it. I'll get you. I know how to get BBG to up the appraisal. I'll get you the funds.
What address is that on?
What?
What address is that on for
That's on 271 Lennox. That's why I'm suffering from him because he's playing as my.
What did he do? What did he play?
So I was going to sell the building. I needed to get out of Madison. And Madison was chucking up more fees and stuff like that. So I needed to get out. And in order for me to pay off the loan and get a new loan, it wasn't enough to pay off. So I was forced to have to sell the building. And this is the building that I really love, the floor 3 units, the 15 floors.
So you were actually in the turbine right now. You're actually...
I'm being sucked into it. So I have to sell and get out. So somebody introduces me... at a broker, and the broker, I don't know why, the broker shared information to Steve Rosenberg, they're obviously friends, and he said he's going to sell this building for me, and he says, well, why sell? I can get him a loan, I can get him this. So Steve Rosenberg himself, the owner of Greystone, not a banker in his place, but reaches out, wants to meet me in his office. He can help me. I know what you're going through with Madison. Oh, like he's talking down, he's a shark, and this is what he does, but I can help you. I can help you get a loan to pay him off, and then you can keep the building. I know how much you love the building. You can keep the building.
This is Greystone.
This is Greystone.
Who's the CEO?
Steve Rosenberg, the CEO himself.
So he's the older version of Josh Zegan.
He's the older, but so much more reserved and so much more classy. Not even in the same. I wouldn't put them in the same. Unbelievable. So,
sharpshooter, Josh.
So. Josh is a sharpshooter, and everybody knows he is, and everybody tells you. But with Steve Rosenberg, you don't see that. He's like the grandfather, chill. I'm going to help you. What do you need? I got this. So I told him, look, I was trying to get a loan, and I was going to get a loan, but once the appraisal came back, there was an issue with taxes. It lowered the appraisal, and I don't qualify to get that loan, so I'm going to have to sell. And okay, so he said, who's in? BBG, you know what? I'm going to make something for you. Don't sell yet. Wait. Give me a few weeks. I'll get BBG. I give them enough business for them to up the appraisal.
That's what he said.
That's what he said, up the appraisal, and I'll pay for it. No bank ever pays for appraisals. I mean, that's the first thing you have to pay. I'll pay it. I'll handle it all. Comes back to me. I got it for 40. I got it up to 47 because last time it came back at 42. Got it to 47, and I'll be able to give you the full loan that you need to take out Madison. Now, I was so thankful, like, wow, you pulled something off. But what I didn't realize is that he upped it, that only he can up it to that amount. So if I want to get out, then I want to go somewhere else. And after this, because this was only a short-term loan, I'm like, how am I going to get it out? Nobody's going to appraise it for that value.
It was loan to own.
Long term. And then while I was thinking, okay, now I'm going to sell again, right? Because I was thought, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. He started saying, I'm going to buy the building. Don't sell. Your buildings are unbelievable. And he made me an offer that I can't refuse, like way higher than anyone else on the market. Between Albemarle and Lennox, he was going to buy both of these buildings. And then, okay, so he sends me the terms and the things. Okay, when does it happen? Oh, he has to work something out. He has the money coming from somewhere else. He's afraid of double taxation. Meanwhile, he's schlepping me around. My time is on his loan is almost up.
Whose loan?
On the Greystone loan that I have with him.
Uh-huh.
And meantime, I'm not refinancing. I'm not selling to anyone else because this guy made me an offer I cannot refuse. And when it comes to, I'm ready to refinance. Oh, he's not refinancing. He's not giving me the new loan. There's something that came up in the title. He's checked into something. He's going to have to put me in default. And I call, that's from their lawyers. They send me. I call them up. I send them a text. What's going on? Why you said you work with me? You'll help me get out. Why are you foreclosing on me? And he says, who's doing that in my office? Like he plays like dumb. Oh, I'm your friend. Let me see about that. Let me talk. And I even showed you now, like, why he says, okay, I'm on it. I'm going to tell them to stop. I'm going to like.
And did they ever stop?
No. And then he says, and then he comes back. He says, well, I spoke to the team. They didn't have a choice. They don't. But
did he buy your loans? No.
No. I came to because he was going to help me get. He's the one who got me up
out of Ziegen.
Yeah, and he just easily. So I wanted to sell
Ziegen.
it.
He paid out Ziegen, and now he's the guy.
I paid out Ziegen, and he took the building from me. He didn't buy it. He took it from me, and he's coming after me for the remainder. But all with a smile. And he sends me a text. I'm sorry. I said, I understand. You're the one who upped this whole thing. You're the one. What are you doing here? He says, like, oh, I'm sorry you feel like that. Like, basically, it's not personal. This is my business. This is how I operate.
So have you learned your lessons?
So, yeah. So, again, it's hard to say because I'm still feeling the pain. So I didn't finish yet the process.
Did it feel like you were confronting the impossible over there?
Oh, I was definitely. Once again, as you keep growing, right, everybody wants to grow. But you're also growing that target on your back. The bigger you become, the more there's more people that are smarter than you and figure out a way how to take away from you what you work hard. And I realized also, like, I'm good at creating, at coming up with a new concept and executing on it and doing, but now it's a fight. And the fights don't work with the story. As you say, it doesn't, when you're a lawyer, you learn the story doesn't matter. It's these dotting the I's and crossing the T's and the little things that you squeeze in. And again, it's all, and sometimes you can win entire things. I lost to Josh Zinger not because of the story, but literally of technicalities. Nothing to do with the case of a paper that I signed years ago that was pushed in between the other things. I'm screaming fraud on the way the whole it is, but like in one of the papers, what I signed, which was just a blank signature page. It was attached to something that says I have no claims against him forever, which automatically there's no case, there's no nothing, there's no story. They perfect the technicalities. It's like the judge doesn't care. Oh, he took from you. It's about the technicalities, how he did it. So my advice is stay away from these privately funded banks.
Or have a good lawyer. Look at those things.
Again, no, it doesn't help because you can't have a lawyer to negotiate for you differently because they don't allow. They don't change because it's a last minute thing. As I said, they set things up that you cannot change. They did it to me in certain closings. The last minute, the day before, they changed. Oh, we can't give you additional $1 million for this. We're going to have to hold it for that. We want to up now we want more in reserve. We want more. And like, that wasn't the deal. It says, yeah, but this is from this fund that I'm taking and I can't close otherwise. And if you don't close, you're in time. Again, of course, if you have a good lawyer that you trust, that you set up with, and they have to be, so this is what I said, never talk directly to the head of the companies. Because when you talk directly to the companies, they tell you, forget about the lawyer, I'm going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. Like this old legal jargon. And then it
makes you feel a certain way.
It makes you feel a certain way. And in other words, if you're the lawyer, if somebody hires you to help him with the line, he cannot be the person he can never communicate again. It has to be through you. Especially with these type of shrewd thinkers. Like You cannot outsmart them. This is what they do day in and day out. Like every loan, they watch everybody. Where's every little hiccup? Who can we now tie up? Who is in a good position? If they don't see you're in a good position, your building isn't good, they don't bother you. But if you're in a good position and there's money to be made, there's a big sandwich to be divided, oh, they want a piece of it. And they will work. And you cannot, because in construction, stuff like this, there's always little minuscule things that happen, and they write their docs in such a way that they can hit you with anything and everything and penalize you. Look, an example in Greystone, right? Like it's a non-recourse loan, but he's coming after me personally. Why? Loan. It's a non-recourse loan, but he says because I did something, the title, the reason he put me default, all of a sudden everything becomes. This is what they do. They have every carve out, everything available to them, every tool, and any mistake you make is a problem. So if you deal with a regular bank, conventional banks, you don't have so much a problem. You have to stick to the rules. You have to follow.
And even if you default, they'll work with you.
And even if they have, let's say, oh, okay, I'll send in the paperwork next week. They work. These people, they're here to catch you because every catch is so much money.
But that's their job.
Again, for these funds. So my advice is, do not take loans from these funds. And if you can't get a loan from a regular conventional bank,
then what? Don't do business?
Don't do this project. No, don't do this project because you're going to be working for years. You're going to be working for years for someone to take it away from you.
But look, and then we have obviously have not a lot of time left, unfortunately, and this was extremely engaging with you, Eli. I guess this is what I'm going to leave you with, okay? You know, in my head, I'm trying to really balance the best interests of the lender and what they're doing and trying to balance the best interests of what you're doing in your project. I think in both scenarios and in both cases, it's about the value that a lender or a type of lender can bring to your project. On the one hand, you have the Josh Deakins of the world and the Stephen Rosses of
Steve Rosenberg,
Rosenbergs of the world, where they act fast, they're shrewd, and they could trip you up a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you ride their wave fast enough, right, and you're agile, you can get out under the skin of your teeth.
It's very hard.
It's very hard,
difficult.
but there is a place for the Josh Deakins of the world and the Stephen Rosenbergs of the world because they are in business. So that means that not everyone had a situation like yours, but in your situation, you needed a little bit of understanding. You needed to tell the story of Hello Living. You needed somebody to understand, and I appreciate that. And on your side, it's kind of like, guys, you see me, Eli Karp, building this vision. Help me create that. And I think on the one hand, Josh and Steve would say, look, we did the best we could. We have investors to look after.
Right.
But on the other hand, you now are smarter. You are more agile. You got to experience the pain of what I call the pain of growing in real estate. And obviously recognizing that you have to have good, competent, shrewd, aggressive counsel to be on your side.
Yes.
We've helped you in certain situations and we continue to do that. And I really appreciate the perspective. The perspective is very clear. If you're going to be dealing with the sharks, you got to be a shark.
Oh, if you're dealing with a shark, you need to get sharky lawyers that really understand and can guide you through this. Otherwise, you have no chance.
You'll get sucked into the turmoil.
You'll get sucked into it, and so you really need lawyers that are smart, that already know what these type and can really guide you.
I appreciate that. Well, it was very nice to hear from you today, Eli. Next time on Confronting the Impossible, and there were some impossible things you had to confront, Eli. And I think you did well under the circumstance, or the best that you could. We'll be seeing you guys back next week. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you.